Welcome to the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. I'm your host, Tom Nelson, and I know firsthand as a family caregiver and part of the sandwich generation how tough it can be to take care of your aging parents while balancing your own life, career, and family. We'll bring you the experts and information necessary to help make your life a little bit easier and you a little bit smarter. Synergy Sessions is brought to you by Synergy Home Care, bringing you personalized in-home care and peace of mind to Silicon Valley families. I really do hope you enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. Today, super excited and happy to have Saili Gosula from Active In-Home Therapy. She is the executive director. And just a little bit about Active In-Home Therapy provides comprehensive in-home personal therapy services to families in the comfort of their and privacy of their own homes. Thanks for being with the podcast here, Saili.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Glad to be able to get the word out.
Yeah, so Saili and I have known each other for a while. Saili used to be straddle both businesses, Active In-Home Therapy as well as Synergy Home Care, previous owner. So she was a great mentor to me, and then now is providing an amazing service to seniors and others in the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. Yeah. So why don't we just start with let us know a little bit about kind of your role and your company and kind of overarching what you do to serve seniors and others in the community.
Sure. So I am the operator and the owner, though I do have two other people who work with me full time, one of them being my son. And we provide in-home physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy to people in their homes. We do not accept insurance, which gives us a lot of freedom to be able to provide what they actually need and not what we think is going to get approved. And we service people in the Bay Area and actually beyond. We are in 23 counties right now.
Oh, wow. Okay, so 23 counties in Northern California. I think you mentioned you're also in Southern California now as well?
Yeah, we have the most clinicians in San Mateo County where we are physically. Second is San Diego and third is San Jose.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's great. So in case they need help or somebody knows somebody might need help there in that area that you're expanding.
23
That's fantastic.
Try us.
So why don't we kick off who is your typical patient, client type person that you're seeing utilizing your services?
Yeah, there's a few different ways that people come to us. Usually it is an older person, but not always. And typically we are getting people that they say, hey, I had surgery, I had home health services, and they're trying to discharge my mom, saying that she's not making progress or she reached her goals, but we think there's a lot more that we can do. And so we are brought in to pick up where insurance left off. And sometimes it is because somebody stops making progress. But insurance visits are usually short and twice a week. And people have a harder time making progress during each of those visits because they are shorter. And they are restricted to working only on what Medicare has approved that they work on.
Right.
So oftentimes there is a little plateau where people make progress and then they stop making progress for a little bit. They will eventually start making progress again, but insurance doesn't have the patience. When there's a plateau, they're like, you stop making progress. This is your new normal. This is where you are. We cannot keep paying for somebody that's not making progress forever. So they cut them off then, and we will pick it up and continue making progress. Our visits are usually longer, which is easier to make progress. We work with the family to figure out, what are your goals? What is it that you want to do? And if that changes at any time during the time that we're working with them, we have the freedom to change that and not have to ask permission from insurance and wait, weeks to get an answer. We're able to immediately course correct based on how the patient is doing and what their goals are at that time.
Got it. Okay. So that's a great segue to just kind of maybe clarify or contrast, what's the difference between what you offer, and I guess, this is more of a private pay model versus traditional home health that's paid by their insurance company, just to clarify the difference.
Yeah. So home health paid by insurance if you are receiving services in home, you have to be bed bound.
Okay.
We do not have that restriction because people are paying out of pocket. They choose to have our services come in. That's one.
Got it.
And they have to have a doctor's prescription saying they need in-home physical therapy. If it doesn't say
Hmm.
in-home physical therapy, insurance doesn't pay for in-home because it's more expensive than them going to an outpatient.
Right. Of
Um,
course.
yeah. So we are able to work with people. A lot of times we have people who could go to outpatient under their insurance, but they don't do it. They're not going to
Hmm.
get rest, get ready, get in the car, and then park and walk. They just won't
Right.
even do it. So we end
Right.
up, helping people at home who could possibly get insurance benefits in a way that's less convenient for them.
Hmm.
So we can do anything they want us to do for as long as they want us to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great point, because I've heard before that even just as easy, when medications are prescribed, not even therapy or something they actually have to physically get in a
Right.
car and go do,
Mm-hmm.
taking your pill. Like, I hear that 50% of prescription medications aren't even taken.
Uh,
So
yeah.
to actually get somebody in a car, inconvenience to get to the hospital, make an appointment, all those things.
Yeah.
So even if they could do that, this type of a service helps make it a little easier for
It's a
them,
lot
so
more
they're more
compliant. Yeah.
compliant is the great word. Yeah. So because they're not going to get better if they're not going to their therapy.
Exactly.
And then, as you alluded before, if they're not getting better, then the insurance is probably going to cut it off because they're not improving. So this is like this vicious cycle. So this is a way for you to
Exactly.
kind of
Exactly.
circumvent that and get them on the right track.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
because we are observing them in their home, we're actually seeing
Yeah.
what is it that they need to do in their environment. So that is not just
Right.
the physical therapy, also occupational therapy.
Uh-huh.
Because if you go to a clinic, you're working on certain things and they have steps and things like that in the outpatient
Yeah.
clinics, but those are not exactly the steps you have at home. So
Right.
we can
Got it.
actually observe them in their environment and work with them on what they need to do to be safe in their environment.
Right. Yes. That's fantastic. So, um, and for people who maybe they're trying to figure out if this service is like applies to them, what exactly, I mean, in general terms, I mean, you and I know these things, but physical therapy, what's the difference between physical therapy and occupational therapy? And then I learned some things about speech therapy that wasn't aware of,
Yeah,
from like the swallowing training and those things. Like, you don't even think about that. So
yeah.
what are those? What do those
Okay,
types of
let's
therapies,
start
and
with
who do they
speech.
serve?
Let's start with speech. So
Yes.
speech usually has different things that we need. Speech in themselves, like speaking,
Hmm.
is one of them. And
Yeah.
that you see, like a lot of kids get speech therapy because they can't say their
Yeah.
R's or whatever.
Right.
Um,
Excuse me. Yeah.
and then there is the swallowing. It's you say speech, but it's really about them eating safely. So it's actually about
Right.
swallowing. And the third
Okay.
way is cognitive, like they're having a
Okay.
hard time finding their words. So it's strategies to help
Oh,
people.
okay.
Exactly. So it's really, it says speech, but it does encompass a lot
Hmm.
more than just regular speech therapy. So
Got it.
that's speech. Now, PT and OT, physical therapy and occupational
Hmm.
therapy, do have some overlap. But the
Hmm.
main difference is physical therapy, you're trying to make somebody stronger overall.
Hmm.
And for occupational therapy, you're actually looking at your activities of daily living and
Okay.
what is it that you need to be able to accomplish those tasks. They will also more likely suggest modifications to the home, equipment to the home, and things like that.
Hmm.
Physical therapy is a bigger part of the business because it's just working on muscles and getting them stronger.
Yes. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So just getting them back to basic function and strength is physical therapy. Occupational therapy is more task specific. So
Exactly.
just getting
Yeah.
through their day, all the different things.
Yeah.
The speech therapy is so fascinating to me. So what would trigger someone to need speech therapy? Like a stroke, or like what are the
A lot
typical
of times,
things
stroke,
that
we
happen
don't have
that,
a stroke. We get stroke probably more
okay,
than anything else because they lose
okay.
perhaps all three of those things I talked about: speech, swallow, and cognition
Hmm.
after the stroke. So that's probably number one. But sometimes it is just as people get older, that they
Okay.
do lose some of those things and things change. When there's a
Hmm.
change, there is possibly a way to reverse a little bit of that and keep them safe, also,
Hmm.
especially with the swallow. And a speech therapist would be able to assess that.
Got it. Is there, and we talked about this in the past, so is everything related to kind of a rehab, or is there more also like prevention type things to help them,
Yeah,
maybe fall prevention or
yeah,
some
yeah,
other
yeah.
type things that this would apply that wouldn't even be in the universe of,
No, that would
a
be
health insurance pay type thing?
Yeah, yeah. We do get a lot of people who say, you know what, we want to stay strong. We want to
Hmm.
stay mobile. We want to work on balance. Things that will
Hmm.
avoid something like a fall that would require you to have rehab later. So we
Right.
do have some clients that stay with us for years because they want the structure and the exercises and to maintain their strength so that they're less susceptible to something that would land them in the hospital. So we do
Right.
have a
Right.
lot of patients like that. So when earlier you asked, how does somebody come to you? I mentioned only one of them. This is the other one. The family say, hey,
Yeah.
she's just not like as strong as she used to be, but we want her to be.
Right.
Or she's going to have surgery in 2 months. We want her to be as strong as possible before surgery so her recovery
Right.
is better after.
Like prehab.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Okay. Wow. That's fantastic. So things like avoiding falls, because I
Mhm.
know the
That's very,
falls are just the first indicator usually for a potential future decline
it
if they're,
changes life. Yeah.
yeah. So as we're talking through this, I'm thinking so many people probably aren't even sure if your, services would apply to them, but they think that maybe it would. Like, what's your process? So if somebody
Yeah.
calls you, like what's like the assessment and then prescription, I mean, how does that
Well,
process
first we
look? And
talk.
then
One of us from the office will have a conversation to them to figure out what they're
hmm
looking for and we can possibly help
hmm
them. But then once that's been established and we got the account all set up, then one of our therapists will go to the house and do an
hmm
evaluation.
okay.
And usually we suggest that if there's a family member involved, that they be
Yeah,
there at the time
sure.
because then they can help come up with goals. This
Hmm.
is what we're trying to accomplish during this time. And if there are exercises that they could possibly help with when we're not there, then we can
Hmm.
show them what they are. And then we can also make
Right.
suggestions in general. So we really encourage the family to work with us during those
Hmm.
evaluations and ongoing to
Right.
have an open dialogue with us and with the therapist.
That's really smart. Yeah, because I think the compliance, you go in and actually do the physical therapy, but it's usually the work is between appointments that they have to.
It could be, but you know what we find a lot is the reason people bring us in is because
Mhm.
mom or dad will not listen to their adult child. Like
Yeah.
if
Oh yeah.
I'm to tell my mom, hey, you need to do your exercises, her response will be, you
Yeah.
don't tell me what to do. But
Yeah.
if your therapist comes in, they're
Hmm.
happily very good patients and doing their
Of
exercises with
course.
the therapist.
Yes. Yes. That's lifelong. That's why you get your kids like music lessons or whatever, because they never going to listen to you to do whatever you
Yes,
want. You got
yes,
to go take them to the pool for swimming lessons and or
exactly.
whatever, because then they'll listen to the teacher.
Exactly.
That's definitely a lifelong thing. For then it just reverses.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, at the end, the parent doesn't want the kids telling them what to do any more than the kids want the parents
exactly.
telling them what to do when they're little. That's hilarious.
And they create that
Um,
relationship with the therapist and they are just
yeah,
they're proud to show the therapist what they were able to do. Yeah.
right. So, do you, with your current patients, is it typically kind of a period of time, or do you have people just kind of on an ongoing, recurring basis
It
to like
depends.
to keep them at the level that they want to be at and
Yeah.
prevent any decline,
Yeah, it
or as much as
depends
possible?
really on what their goals are. If people
Hmm.
come to us with specific goals, we work on
Hmm.
them. Once we're done with the goals, if they want to discontinue services, we celebrate.
Hmm.
We did
Okay.
what we were
Yeah.
trying to do, right?
Sure.
But we do have a lot of people that come to us saying, I want this ongoing. I want this
Yeah.
to be a long-term health
Hmm.
thing that we do with my mom, that she's going to
Right.
forever work on her exercises. She's not going to let that go. So there's a variety, and we really only require 24 hours notice to cancel services
Hmm.
altogether. So I don't want anybody to be stuck with us unless they're happy with what they're
Sure.
getting from us.
Yeah.
So it works out really well.
Got it. Um, we didn't really talk about this question, but I'm thinking that maybe there might be some confusion about what's the difference between like hiring like a personal trainer or something to help them with that versus someone that has a much higher
Yes.
credential as a
Yeah.
physical therapist or occupational therapist. I mean, what would be the differentiator like as far as going to
Absolutely.
with you as opposed to somebody who's got a fitness certification or
So
something?
I don't want to discredit all the personal trainers out there because
Sure.
there's some who are have really done their work and trying to
Yeah.
really understand how to work with elderly people, and they do a good
Yep.
job. But my
Hmm.
physical therapists, they most of them have doctorates, so
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
level of education and training that they have had to go through is huge. I have had
Yeah.
multiple families come to us after their loved one had been working with a personal trainer and got
Hmm.
hurt
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
knowledge wasn't as deep as our physical therapists have.
Right.
So once they come to us, they won't go back because they say this is just she knows so much more how to work with my mom and what's safe and how hard to push and
Yeah.
what the progression is going to look like.
Yeah.
So you can possibly get some of this from a personal trainer, but it's the rare personal trainer that has the type of knowledge that a physical
Right.
therapist does by definition by their degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, no disparaging the fitness industry. Um, but yeah, if you have very specific needs, you want to make sure you get on the right track with the right credentialed person. And I think, physical therapy is probably a great place to start, especially if you have very kind of acute rehab issues. Plus, if you're more frail, or I mean, that's a much safer way to go for sure. But I think that's what people are thinking is like, anybody that'll come to the house, they're just going to trust they know what they're doing. But you're bringing a level of credential. I mean, doctorate. I mean, that's pretty huge to have
Yeah,
somebody come
yeah.
to you. So that's fantastic. Um, what do you say? What would you say the demand is? We were talking earlier about most people probably don't even know this service
Right.
is
Yeah.
available. Where do you think the gaps are? I mean, how many? I mean, do you
It's a lot.
when Medicare or whatever their health insurance stops and now they're so are there a lot of people in that situation?
There are a lot of people. I have met so many people that said, "Oh, I wish I knew you guys had this service when my
Yeah.
parents needed it. I didn't know that was even
Hmm.
possible that we could do this." Um, Insurance has gone the way of shortening hospital stays, shortening number
Hmm.
of visits they pay for under insurance. So
Hmm.
it's we have a lot more older people now, and
Yeah.
insurance is paying for less. So the demand is
Right.
really high. We are
Hmm.
currently in a like sometimes we can service people right away if they call. Sometimes we have a
Yep.
waiting list because there's an area that
Yeah.
has a lot of demand and we can't meet it immediately.
Sure.
We do our best, but it's not always possible. But the demand
Yeah.
is high right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, it seems like it's such an amazing service, especially for people. It could be the difference between staying independent at home or avoiding a fall or
Yeah,
just having a much more effective and efficient rehab process to get
yeah.
back onto their feet as quickly as possible with this type of um, kind of personal care. Um, I'm gonna definitely have all of your information in the show notes and everything, how to reach your company and you. Is there anything that we haven't talked about today that we should know about active in-home
I think
therapy?
that so I want to give some examples from when I was in home care. When I was
Yeah.
in home care, because as you know, I'm a very active person and I really believe in the
Yes.
power of exercise and physical therapy and all of that.
Yep.
But it's part of it is because I would see it with my clients under home care,
Yes.
where I would meet people that were always hunched over and like
Yeah.
would talk to me looking at my feet because they couldn't stand up straight, and then
Yeah.
something would happen on their foot or whatever, and they would go to physical therapy on their foot, and then they came back there standing up straight, looking at me, straight on. They have a
Yeah.
new lease on life, and I saw that
Yeah.
happen often enough. And then it happened with a family member where they had a surgery and were very, very careful until they had a single physical therapy
Oh.
appointment.
Hmm.
And it is because people are scared. People are scared. I
Yeah.
don't want to do this because it's not safe for me and I'm going to hurt myself and I'm too old and I'm not going
Yeah.
to be able to recover. But if they're
Right.
working with the physical therapist, they know that person knows what they're doing. So if they say
Yep.
you can stretch this much, they will trust and they will make so much more progress than they could
Yeah.
possibly do on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, well, that's a great example. Do you have um, maybe a success story off the top of your head
Oh,
that
I have
someone who's
a
really
huge one.
benefited from that, maybe wasn't even thinking about your services, physical therapy, occupational therapy, but they encountered you and you helped them and
Yeah.
had a good outcome.
Well, I have one that it's kind of sad because he's somewhat of a younger man, 40
Hmm.
something, maybe close to 50, had a stroke.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
he had his home health services. When they ended their home health services, he was still bedbound.
Mm.
So then a year later, not even right away, his
Uh-huh.
family contacted us and we worked with him. We got this man not just back on his feet, he went back to work.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he thought this was not possible.
Yeah.
And it is because often insurance visits are somewhat short. They're like 25
Hmm.
minutes, let's say. I'm
Yeah.
just going to make that. Ours
Right.
are 50 minutes long. What you
Okay.
can get in those 50 minutes is so much more because the warm up is just little,
Yep.
and then there's this entire time that you can do it. And if things change, we can change it. And insurance might also discharge if they get to their goal too quickly. If their goal was you just
Yeah.
stand, once he stood, they might discharge. As we are like, hey, we
Yeah.
can keep doing more until you get to where you've
Right.
reached the true potential. So that was
Right.
just huge. Yeah.
So that comes in, excuse me, where the goals are like, hey, I don't just want to stand. I want to get back to where I want to get back to as much functionality as I had before, if possible. And it sounds
But
like that's,
that
you
is
just keep
not what
building on that.
that's not what they came to us with. They did not think it
Yeah.
was possible.
Yeah.
So that's the
Wow.
huge part is we did everything
Yeah.
they wanted and continue working with them to get beyond where they
Yeah.
thought it was possible.
Right. So just like when you do your assessment, you probably can help people in ways they weren't even considering
Yes.
ahead of that. So when
Yeah.
you look at the assessment and say, okay, yeah, well, we can address your issue that you want to solve, but if we did X, Y, and Z things, we can also get you to this other level that you're not even thinking about.
That is usually at the in-person evaluation by the physical therapist.
Yeah.
I'm not licensed to anything. So it's
Yeah.
my staff that does the magic.
Yeah.
They're the ones.
Sure.
who
Yeah.
that. Yeah. But
Yep.
for sure, I've heard many times that we get beyond what they're expecting they're going to get.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it goes to say, and I've said this with a few of my guests, we're all serving people in this industry, some just in the senior industry, you're kind of beyond that as well, or extended to people of all ages, I'm imagining, but just being in this business and having the heart to help people, because as you know, it's not always the easiest way to make money. And so thank you for your service and doing what you do and being a mentor to me in the home care business, and then transitioning to the in-home therapy business and providing such an amazing service that I think is really helping people. I hope we can get the word out for you so they know this is an option. You don't have to accept what your medical professional or insurance is granting you. You can go beyond that if you feel like you want to transcend where you're at right now. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm so glad we were able to finally get together, and we will have all of Saili's information and her company, Active In-Home Therapy, so you can reach out and connect and see if she's a fit for you. And we'll see everybody next time on the Synergy Sessions. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on the Synergy Sessions. We know you have a lot on your plate, so we really appreciate you spending the time with us today. If you found the information in this episode useful, please reach out to the guest or the resources in the show notes. I know they would appreciate it and would love to help. Also, if you have an idea for a future episode, please reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook, or email us and let us know. We'd love to hear from you and provide information that's useful. Lastly, please remember, you don't have to do this alone.